Amoco knew the pressure was high in the well. Last week the pressure began creeping up and they were afraid it would blow then. Yesterday a crew came in to lay a pressure relief line and to prepare the rig for removal. But around 5:30 this morning the built-up gases erupted. The crews from this morning are no longer at the well site. They're about a half-mile away, waiting out the time, watching the well in the distance. One man tells what happened.
It just started belching and spewing out that 4-inch line. And then the ground just started shaking and everybody just said, get off the location. So we just started running.
Most of the farmhouses nearby are empty. The residents are staying in Weatherford. One couple decided to stay a while longer, but said they would not spend the night.
He just said that, of course, the gas has been shooting out those pipes, that they have some lines run out east of the well. And he said it was shooting out there, and is also breaking loose underneath the derrick and coming up from the well, up underneath. And he said it could blow any time. He said it looked like it was going to go. So that's all I know. And then there was a couple of the workers came down, and they said about the same thing.
Said it's more dangerous if it blocked off. Blocked off.
The couple lives about a quarter mile away from the well. Their bags are packed and they're ready to go when they need to. The Oklahoma Highway Patrol is blocking the entrance to the well site. The only vehicles going in carry people and equipment to bring the gas pressure under control. People at the scene say that so far they have been lucky, and they hope their luck holds out until the danger is over. Charles Schnitzer, Action 4, near Hydro, Oklahoma.
They scare me. They're too noisy and they're just a pain to live around.
I do have one next door and I don't want it there.
Could you imagine how hard it would be to sleep at night with all the thump going on?
What everybody is talking about, of course, is this noisy, greasy pile of metal that no one would like to have next door to it. However, the fact of the matter is, in producing states like Oklahoma, oil wells are just about everywhere, and they will put them just about anywhere. The wells on the Capitol grounds are an oddity for tourists from non-producing states, but if you've lived in Oklahoma very long, it gets to where you don't even notice oil wells anymore, even when they intrude on scenes that some architect went to a lot of trouble to make pretty. But let's face it, oil wells are not pretty, no matter where you put them, and it seems you can put them anywhere. They are as commonplace as another piece of playground equipment, but
I wouldn't like to have one next to me.
And unless they are getting a percentage of the profits, who would? After all, things tend to happen at oil and gas wells that make close proximity a little more troublesome than the neighbor who doesn't keep up his yard.
They have shut this road down and they've evacuated the houses down through there. I would consider it a hazard, yes. They've turned the power off in my house.
People who buy surface rights, but not mineral rights, are sometimes upset when someone comes onto their property with the intention of drilling. Some go to court to fight it, but most lose the battle.
He's not a completely innocent person. He either sold them or he bought it well aware that this could happen. Okay, now, this happens all the time, and I can sympathize with the service owner if I were in his shoes.
But on the other hand,
I have a friend that has one in her yard, and she doesn't get anything off of it, and she doesn't like it. And I go to visit her, and I don't like it. Now, I don't know whether I could live and get used to it or not.
But people better get used to it because the boom is on, and you can't ignore the figures.
Last year was the first year we exceeded some 80,000 wells nationwide, and Oklahoma contributed a disproportionate part of that. So it is significant to the economy of Oklahoma. I don't know as it exceeds agriculture, but it's right up at the top. For example, the oil and gas income to the state of Oklahoma from gross production tax alone, which is 7% of every barrel and every cubic feet of gas that comes out of the ground, last year was $540 million.
My husband's in the business, but I still wouldn't want one in my backyard.
More land is being open to drilling now. Interior Secretary James Watt wants to open some national wilderness areas to leasing, but people are upset by that, so they may hold off. It's not exactly next door, but why should they drill on land preserved for the national enjoyment?
We, as a group, have to balance the needs preserving wilderness areas versus energy, which provides jobs and makes this economy go, and goodness knows, you know, we got a lot of unemployment. We need jobs.
But
Boy, I would not appreciate having a well in my front yard.
Ted Brown, Action 4.
You know, we cannot positively say that Agent Orange causes cancer. We know that dioxin is a carcinogenic, but how much exposure is necessary. So what we're doing is setting up a study group inside the Oklahoma, just like 7 other states are basically doing, and say the Vietnam era veterans who served in Nam, they have a higher incidence of cancer than just the regular veterans or the general population in their age group at this time. And that's basically what our bill is going to do.
Thanks a lot for your help. We'll make sure we check this.
That's good, Mary. Mary, I want you to try to make your lips real tight. Like that.
Not all learning comes from reading books. Touching, feeling, and experiencing can be valuable lessons for youngsters.
See this thing here, this piece of wood?
Yeah.
Within the trumpet, what did we make vibrate in the trumpet to make the sound? What vibrated? Do that. Everyone do that. What vibrated? What went back and forth?
The chance for hands-on experience can open a new world to young minds.
Okay. Everybody got them like this.
Robert Carr is a professional designer of airplanes. In his Super Saturday class, he teaches the basics of aerodynamics by having kids make their own paper airplanes. Well, just as in real life, Carr demonstrates how planes can vary in shape and size, but stresses how certain elements, such as balance and control, must remain consistent for a successful craft.
Now, it should be a little better, but maybe not as good as we'd like for it to be. Ah, you see how much better that is?
Part of today's lesson was learning that it sometimes takes several attempts to get an idea off the ground. And just like this plane, the idea of the Super Saturday program seems to be flying high. Carol Lambert, Action 4.
The government concedes that every man who ever fought in Vietnam was exposed to Agent Orange. What they will not admit is that the chemical herbicide is the cause, years later, of liver ailments, birth defects, and cancer. But veteran David Carter is convinced his problems are caused by Agent Orange. He is totally disabled with severe chest pains and arthritis of the spine. He has not had a paying job in 5 years, and his wife supports the family. His friend, veteran Bob Peters, suffers some of the same symptoms, and both of his children suffer from birth defects. Carter is not being compensated by the government for what he considers a war-related disability, and that makes him bitter.
When I didn't know what was wrong with me, there was an extreme amount of stress, and a lot of veterans are feeling that. They're sick, they're ill, their kids are damaged, they don't know why. A lot of guys blame themselves, you know. And I felt that. And when that's there, it kind of overrides everything else. And then when I thought I was affected, yeah, I felt cheated and used. And then when I see the number of children that are damaged, and to be blunt, the out-and-out lies that the VA are coming out with, I become very angry.
The bills before the state legislature will provide for a program which will locate other veterans affected by Agent Orange and will help establish a link between symptoms and the herbicide through testing, which could help Carter's efforts to get some kind of compensation from the government. Ted Brown, Action 4 in Lexington. Over the past few years, Coyle, Oklahoma's only bank has been robbed 5 times. Today's robbery at the 89er bank was a little different, however, because the suspects seemed so ill-prepared.
I found it when he throwed it, it stuck up straight up the ground with the barrel.
To begin with, he used a .38 Smith & Wesson that bordered on being an antique. Secondly, he didn't have a getaway car. He put $2,000 into a paper bag and took off on foot. The alarm interrupted the Coyle police chief's lunch, but as it turned out, there wasn't any hurry to catch the suspect.
I jumped out of the car and yelled at him to freeze, and finally he did. I did fire warning shots, and he went down on his knees and put his arms over his head like I told him to. And I arrested him, advised him of his rights, took him in custody, the money and the gun.
How come he was on foot?
I don't know. Why a man would rob a bank on foot, I have no idea. I wouldn't try.
24-year-old Van Dorn Vance was later booked into the Logan County Jail on federal charges of bank robbery. The suspect lists his home as Los Angeles, California. Police are checking now to see if maybe his driver's license had expired. Ted Brown, Action 4 in Coyle, Oklahoma.
It is an understatement to say the chairman of the House Mental Health Committee is unhappy with Frank James. Representative Ross Duckett in the Mental Health Committee hashed over James and his department for months before completing this investigative report. Duckett says the results are conclusive. James has failed as mental health director.
There is evidence within the Department of Mental Health that through the years, through the last year or two, there has been widespread misuse and abuse of personal service contracts. There have been hundreds of thousands of taxpayers' dollars paid to individuals and to groups to deliver service where service was not delivered, where the contracts were not written so they could be audited, and the state has lost a great deal of money. This reflects poor administration.
I would like to know one example of that hadn't been told to me. You know, they reviewed over 300 contracts over the past 3 years, and in the document only 3 contracts are criticized. And we've got, I think, a reasonable explanation for those 3 contracts.
It's obvious from our committee's work that there has been some withholding of information from the legislature by the commissioner or by those in the Department of Mental Health under his control.
No, I don't think so. There was an incident where a chart that was to be presented by the superintendent of one of the hospitals was to be presented. The accusation is that I said that the chart wasn't there, and I never made that statement. I never told anyone not to show the chart, and I think it's been falsely misrepresented.
Probably one of the overriding problems is simply perhaps a lack of strong, definitive leadership in the Department of Mental Health.
I'll be glad to respond to that. The department was moving very well until the divisiveness that this whole investigation, I think, has created. And that has caused some employees to wonder which side to take. But I think that that's being resolved now, and I'm going ahead with the personnel actions that needed to be taken with my board's mandate that I do so, that I think is going to resolve that divisiveness. And as far as, you know, as the direction and accomplishments and management goes, I'll only stand on the record that we have.
James will be forced to stand on that record and put up a defense, since legislators insist there are abuses in the state mental health department. Larry Audis, Action 4.
Building a new home today is not very practical for most people. Interest rates for new home loans are up to 17 or 18% if you can find an institution with money to lend you. Which brings us to older homes. If you have an older home with an older mortgage, say one with a 4 or 6% interest rate, your savings and loan institution would like for you to pay it off. They'll even knock off as much as 10% of the interest owed to get you to do it.
It's an opportunity for the mortgagor or the borrower to reduce his debt with a credit or a discount. At the same time, the association can ultimately benefit from the use of the funds that are attracted from the payoff. So unless it was attractive to both parties, I don't think a transaction would happen.
It is obviously attractive to homeowners. Blake's company cleared $500,000 in old mortgages in a 30-day period. Part of the reason, he says, has to do with the security of finally owning the home you paid so much and so long to get. Ted Brown, Action 4.
Brilliant and capable generation.
I take great pleasure in presenting you to
in the future, constant improvement. The erasure of many things that have occurred in the past, particularly racially, educationally, and we find, I think that someday the people will be as one. It will not know denominations, it will not know color, it will not know a lot of things that we have known in the past.
The U.S. Senate Subcommittee on Juvenile Justice has invited the Human Services Department to respond to charges of physical and sexual abuse of children in its institutions. 2 weeks ago, the Senate panel heard shocking stories of children who had their arms broken by security guards at state-run facilities. Department Director Lloyd Rader and 8 of his underlings were supposed to travel to Washington last week, but testimony was postponed to allow more time for rounding up information on the cases. The senators are busy this week, so next week would be the earliest possible date for department testimony. In a related matter, the Public Welfare Commission will be meeting again this week to decide what to do about a child abuse lawsuit which is still pending against the Human Services Department. Last week, federal Judge Ralph Thompson threw out a proposed settlement of the suit which would have made some sweeping changes in Oklahoma's juvenile justice system. The Welfare Commission has invited some state legislators and the Attorney General to attend this week's meeting to help hammer out a new settlement of the suit. Scott Wallace, Action 4. The motion filed in federal district court asks Judge Ralph Thompson to prevent the Human Services Department, quote, from binding children with mechanical restraints and shackles in the absence of detailed guidelines governing their use, from using metal shackles, and from hog-tying children. The motion goes on to say that during on-site institutional inspections last summer, the plaintiffs found evidence such practices were continuing. A Human Services Department spokesman says it isn't necessary to take any legal action on the matter, since Department boss Lloyd Rader outlawed the use of most mechanical restraints last summer. He says the department at that time rounded up all mechanical restraints, such as handcuffs, leg chains, belly chains, and even a straitjacket.
Every restraint device that we know of was sent in here, and this is what you see here. Subsequently, on October 30th of last year, then he issued a new restraint policy, which allows only the use of what we call humane mental health type restraints, and that's the policy that's in place today.
Miller says that according to department policy, leather mental health restraints may be used to help transport security risk students for medical reasons or to prevent injury to the student or others. But he says the devices are no longer used for punishment purposes. Judge Thompson is expected to rule on the mechanical restraint question soon. Scott Wallace, Action 4 at the State Human Services Department.
I am opposed to the proposed increase in the gross production tax on gas, and I continue to be opposed to any increase in taxes whatsoever. The extremely healthy economy of the state of Oklahoma gives us the opportunity to do those things that the legislature and the executive branch deems as appropriate and necessary without any increase whatsoever in taxes.
The number of rapes in our state and around the nation has reached staggering proportions. Last year, there were some 60,000 reported rapes nationwide. Officials say a woman is raped in this country every 6 minutes. In Oklahoma, approximately 415 women last year reported that they were raped. Many of them turned to the YWCA Rape Crisis Center.
YWCA Rape Crisis Center, this is Marjorie.
20 volunteers man phones around the clock. They are trained to help the victims deal with their immediate state of fear and trauma, and to get the victims help if they want it.
All right, now you understand, I will put you on hold. I will dial the police, and then I will get back to you. All right. Thank you, dear.
Joy Luther, director of the Rape Crisis Center, says only 5 to 25% of all rapes are reported.
So in 1981, there were 415 forcible rapes reported to the Oklahoma City Police Department. So we're talking a considerable number more that actually occur. There are a lot of assaults occurring in the Oklahoma City area and nationwide.
The physical act of rape is over in just a few moments, but for the victims, the event taints their lives for years to come. There are no easy answers, but the rape crisis groups and law enforcement are doing what they can to make sure you don't become the next victim. If you need their help, call the Rape Crisis Center at 524-RAPE. Debbie Mash, Action 4.
It all began when Braniff made a list and checked it twice, and found seats once vacant were now vacant twice. So they thought long and hard and came up with a plan that one ticket purchased was worth two in the hand. Now you may ask, why such a drastic measure? It's really quite simple. They're under some pressure.
We want the business. We need it. We're offering 2 for 1. You buy a ticket, example, $270 round trip to Miami. You can take the second person with you for another $1. So it'll be $271 round trip to Miami. People don't necessarily have to travel out of the same destination. They can travel to different destinations on different dates. The same person can use both tickets himself.
So the race was on in this good old USA, and it soon became the American way. So starting tomorrow, tickets will sell 2 for 1, faster than, well, Sherry Sellers, Action 4.
Predicting Oklahoma's weather is a job tackled daily by the National Weather Service. The service has 2 stations in the state, one in Tulsa, the other in Oklahoma City, just west of Will Rogers World Airport. The center supplies information to hundreds of radio and television stations around the state. Approximately $4 million in equipment is used at the Oklahoma City Center in charting weather patterns around the state. When the patterns indicate severe weather, the service often has to rely on more than just their equipment and employees. They call in volunteers to help spot tornadoes. Some of the spotters are trained by the National Weather Service. Neil Marchbanks, meteorologist at the center, says potential spotters will be trained this evening as Tornado Preparedness Week winds down.
Very difficult. So we need people, and people we can trust. Now, not just people, but people we can trust out in the field, observing the clouds, so we can get something here on the radar, and then we want to know more about that particular area. Then we can call someone to observe that.
The training program Skywarn will be tonight at 8 o'clock in the auditorium of the Mike Monroney Aeronautical Center. According to Marchbanks, it's not that Oklahoma's weather is unpredictable, there just aren't enough people to help predict it. Debbie Mash, Action 4.
4850.